We're back, and we're talking about evangelism. Welcome to the To Be the Church podcast, where we are finally back. Hello.
We're back, dude. I like how that was a special intro, like when they have a different song to lead into the show when it's like a special show. Although this isn't a special show. This is we're back, dude.
Yeah, this is the new normal. Ben, Andrew, and Tyler back together at last.
This is our New Year's resolution, TBTBC listener. Like, we're sorry that we're horrible. I blame Ben and Tyler and myself.
I think I was on the last few, so
yeah, you were.
I was trying.
Yeah. I just went back and looked.
It's hard.
And it's been a few months.
It's been a minute.
Yeah, so I mean, we could go 100 different directions. We could go like what we've been working on, what we've been doing, why we were too busy to do this podcast. We could talk what your New Year's resolutions are. You just mentioned that.
I don't have any except for this.
This
is my life.
This is your new. Actually, kind of funny. I was cleaning the house the other day, and I was like, I'm going to listen to a podcast about New Year's resolutions because I just don't have any, and I want to figure out what's going on. And I found one, and it was on the front page of Apple, and so I was like, all right, let's check this out. And it was the lamest thing I've ever heard in my life because it was like the unresolution. We are not here to put pressure on ourselves. We are here to accept who we are with our limitations. And it was so bad that I couldn't turn it off. And I listened to it for like 40 minutes. And it was like the shame that you will feel by February 1st is unacceptable. You do not do that to yourself. Instead, have a New Year's experiment. Try something for 2 weeks. Ask yourself, how do I feel? Does this add to my life? So I have New Year's experiments now.
Yeah. Experiments. Yeah. Nice, man. No, I got out of resolutions a few years back, maybe like 10, you know. I think I used to be pretty into them, but it's like I just, you know, not for that reason, but more just like I set goals and I work to accomplish those goals and I have lists and I have those kinds of things, but it doesn't change in September and in January. I
have a faint memory of talking about this on this podcast, probably after the first of the year before. And so, yeah, people can go back and listen to that, whatever our thoughts were on that.
I don't know. Yeah, I like the reset. I haven't done it this year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I remember saying something like, I do appreciate Mondays and it's like fresh start. All right, let's get after it. But
I like the new year. I do like the changeover from December to January because there's always like the anniversaries for us. Like we got here to the church in December or in like November, December of 2010. And so there's always like that anniversary that comes. And then my birthday is January 16th.
Birthday's coming up. And so 45 years old. 68 years old?
45, dude. Halfway through 40s, man.
Halfway to 90.
So, yeah, halfway to 90. Also true. Yes. Dude, Ben laying down the math. So, in the in-between time, we weren't doing podcasts because Ben was taking math classes at Clark College.
That's my resolution is to become a numbers guy. So
yeah, so Ben applying for operations roles at NGC. Yeah.
I have a couple, do you guys, the way I think about a resolution is like, there's a couple, because I like to read and study. It's like topics that I want to read about this year. One of them being parenting. Like I have a few parenting books I want to read because my oldest just turned 13 in September, and I'm kind of getting the panic of like, oh crap, 5 years and she's 18. Like, what am I doing? I got to figure it out. And it's really like acting like I'm sovereign and God's not. But like, I want to make a good use of the time and grow as a parent.
That's what I tell Katie when she's like, please read this parenting book. I'm like, no, God's sovereign.
Can't do anything about it. Yeah.
It's an answer to prayer, Ben.
But
I've been hoping you would figure it out one of these days.
Well, you guys are ahead of me a little bit. You're supposed to tell me. But that, and then the other topic is like evangelism. That's something I felt personally and as a church at CW, I want to grow like evangelistically. So I want to read books on that and try to create a culture of evangelism at our church. But
you were just going into some spiritual gift stuff, right? Like late last year, that was kind of one of the topics. Was that
still reading on that?
Yeah, that you just
got it all figured out.
Yeah.
No, I'm still wrestling with those things. What do spiritual gifts look like in the life of the church? I think I've been. On paper, I would tell you, since seminary, I've been like a continuationist with a seatbelt, which pretty much just means like you believe in the gifts, but you don't ever pursue them or practice them. So, yeah, don't want to be that anymore. But
I definitely have stuff like that. Again, it's not necessarily correlated with New Year's, but eldership, pastoring. I've been reading a ton of books on that area lately, and manhood stuff.
Yeah,
gospel masculinity. I was like, I'm almost 45. I was like, I should probably try to be a man. So I started reading on manhood stuff. No, we started Gospel Men stuff in September, and so I've been burning through books on that area, and that kind of overlaps a little bit with eldership and pastoring. The whole men thing, because pastors are men.
Yes, they are. Could we, this might be a pivot, but since I brought it up, could we talk about evangelism?
Oh, wow. Okay.
Because
here's
what makes me think of this would be good. I want to hear from you guys. You brought it up in a preaching team before the new year about good conversations you're having with like the gal who cut your hair.
Yeah.
And then Tyler, your family does such a good job in the Washougal community. If you guys have a ton of friends through your kids and sports and school, and I know you guys have like an evangelistic heart for all those people. So yeah, I guess like how do you guys, as guys who work in the church and are surrounded by Christians a lot of the time, what is like your just personal opinion, ambition, strategy when it comes to like evangelism and just like telling people who literally aren't Christians, who are lost, about the gospel? Like, how do you guys even think about that in your life?
I think Tyler Colenso is a great person for this, because him and his family are some of the best I know at this. Yeah. So Tyler, tell us how to do it.
I was going to say, here's how bad I am at it. Actually, I've been thinking about it this week because Max preached at CW this past Sunday, and I was there. And one of the things he said, I'm not going to get it verbatim, but he essentially said the amount of time I've spent like hiding behind this falsehood that that like I need to know someone super well before I can share my faith with them. And he didn't say it exactly, but essentially that was his idea, was like I've lied to myself and said like, oh, I can't be an evangelistic because I'm like I haven't earned that in their life yet, or something like that, And that hit me, and I was like, oh, like sure, I have a ton of relationships with people, but I'm also like too late in the game, I would say, to shift the conversations that way, And I think that there's been times where I've lived in a culture that was way too quick. That was like, hey, I'm Tyler. Have you ever met the Lord and Savior Jesus Christ? And that was like kind of the regular thing. And so I think that I, as we've talked about on this podcast multiple times, swung the pendulum, to where it's like, but I will say, like, to what you guys are saying is like, I found it very valuable to just like surround myself outside of church with just the people who are in the community, and not try to live in a bubble. Does that make sense? So,
yeah, I think what you're speaking to is important. Like, there's the tension between, or the difference between, like stranger evangelism, street evangelism, and then lifestyle or relational evangelism. I think both have merit, but you're right that sometimes we can like be, I'm just building relationships to have that opportunity, where then it's like a few years later and you're like, okay, I think there's a relationship. Like I have to bring up the gospel at some point. But yeah. What do you think, Andrew? Yeah, you're obviously thinking that way because you brought it up about the guy who cut your hair, and like,
yeah,
and you were even saying as we preach at Christmas time, having those people in mind. But like, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, that I think so to talk about that second part first, I do think that we, and Tyler, you mentioned like being around Christians all the time in ministry, and I do think like on a church staff, you are surrounded by Christians. Hopefully they're Christians on our staff. It's on the employee application. Are you a Christian? But I do think that like there are a lot more unsaved people a part of the visible church than we suspect. I think that I'm going back to like, who was it, Rhett, that gave us that mug like year 2 of the To Be the Church podcast?
No, it's not that one. No, it's that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, the one behind Ben.
Yeah.
Grab that, Ben.
What's in the back of that? This is a long time To Be the Church listener. Read that, Ben.
Does it matter how many people are in your church, or does it matter how much church is in your people?
That's something we said early on, I think, that thing in the To Be the Church podcast, and that reality that there's a lot of evangelism to be done in the church, in the sense of people who show up to the church, people who are in proximity to the church, people who might show up into your building on a Sunday. And I think assuming that the people are there that are believers will make you preach sermons that are specifically geared toward the believer, which is your primary audience. But I think you have to have moments within your preaching that are evangelistic and apologetic to know that you are addressing people that are not believers who are there, and some, maybe many at times, who think they're believers but are falsely assured and they are actually believers. And so I think being wise to that. Tyler mentioned the street evangelism stuff. That was kind of my experience growing up in late high school and throughout college. I think I've mentioned on this podcast before, but Fisherman's Fridays, we call them, down at this church that I was a part of in Salem, Oregon, near where we grew up. And Fisherman's Friday was, you'd go down to the waterfront in Salem and you just walk through and just street evangelism. And you're just talking to people about the gospel and you're striking up conversations with people. This is in the late 90s, early 2000s. So there were some homeless people at the time that you'd strike conversations up with. Now in those areas, there might be a ton more than there was back then, but it would be just anybody, and you're going out, you show up to the church, you'd pray, and you'd go out and do street evangelism for, 3 hours, and then you'd convene and go back and, chat through it or whatever at the church. So, that was cool. That was some of my early experiences and did a fair bit of that back in the day. Now I think it's kind of the relational evangelism pieces. And Tyler, like you said, I think I'd be at that same place where I go, in fact, I think I was even thinking about this recently. The reality that I don't feel like I am as focused on this as I should be. I think that even as you bring it up, Ben, I'm like, yeah, I think I could feel that conviction for sure that I need to be better at both. I think the beginning of it is prayer, like praying for the Lord to give you opportunities, and then being ready when those opportunities come and praying that you will be ready. So I really do think that the activity of evangelism, and you'll read a lot online and you can see the difference between people will talk about evangelism, the responsibility of all believers, versus maybe a gift of an evangelism, which I think it could be a real spiritual gift for sure. But even whether or not you think you have the gift of evangelism, we are all called to evangelize, like for sure, which is just, to present the gospel to people and to share our faith with people. 1 Peter 3, to give a defense of the hope that we have within us. So, Well,
and I think I feel that conviction. That's why I brought it up. And there's something that I've noticed about my own heart. I have pretty much zero fear getting up in the pulpit and preaching the gospel, and even to unbelievers in the congregation or who are there. But there's a fear and a cowardice in me, when someone's cutting my hair, or when I'm, for some reason, or I'm talking to a neighbor that's I can be so bold, which I think a lot of people would be the opposite, right? I could never get up in front of people, but why is that? Why is there a fear there? And so I just want to share it. And I think putting myself in uncomfortable situations that cause me to depend upon the Lord, I think would be life-giving for me. And also as a church, CW is experiencing growth. We just added a second gathering a couple months ago, and it's great. But a lot of the time, I feel like our churches grow because of transfer growth, which is not a bad thing. If people come and they're really rooting down and being in the church, that's great. But I want to see our church grow from lost people getting saved, baptized, and becoming church members. I want more. We've had some of those stories at CW. I want more, So I need to lead by example, and just creating that culture in our church where we're praying, like you said, we're praying for opportunities, we're being bold, and then I don't know. I just want to see more of it.
One of the things you said is praying for opportunities.
Yeah.
One thing I've noticed in you is, as you've been coaching sports in the community, is I'll see you at the coffee shop or hear conversations that you've had with other dads from those worlds who seek you out and to talk about stuff like this. Mm-hmm. Where that's an interesting angle on evangelism. It may not seem like evangelism if they're coming to you. At least in my head, it's evangelism is me coming to the person and being let me tell you about this. But that's an interesting, the minute you said praying for opportunities, it's I see that in you a lot, where people who aren't Christians, or I think about CW as well, there's a lot of people that are coming there who were in church pre-COVID and just like fell off, or were maybe really fringe before COVID and just stopped completely. I can think of multiple families that I know from the community who've started coming to CW, and their story is one of like, yeah, we went to this church, like some church 7 years ago, and so they're baptized or whatever, but they've like haven't lived in church community for a long time. So anyway, yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think so. Praying for evangelism or praying for opportunities is big, dude, and having that readily on your heart and mind. I also think, like you mentioned the thing of the story about the person cutting my hair. I think I don't know. I think evangelism and sharing our faith. I do think, like you said, Tyler, you mentioned that sometimes this can be an excuse not to really come out with it evangelism-wise, but the building of relationship and the building of credibility with people, I do think is important. Mm-hmm. I think the Lord's primary means of evangelizing the lost is the people of God, empowered by the Spirit, sharing their faith with other people, like with non-believers. I think that's the primary means. I do think the word being preached is how the Lord's going to create his people. So I think inviting people to church, I think those are all vital things. But even in Keller's book on preaching, he talks about like preaching or sharing the word and many different means through which that happens. And a believer sharing the word with a non-believer is in some ways a way that we preach, right? And present the gospel and evangelize. And so, but I think that like and the reason I say that are the primary means is because I think that there's a church culture in America that's sort of dependent on the legacy of, let's say, like the Billy Graham crusade movement and those kind of deals, which is from another legacy in American culture of sort of mass evangelism. And people think about like a big evangelistic crusade where a Billy Graham would stand up, and certainly someone with the gift of evangelism and presenting the gospel who would present that, and then people would respond to an altar call. And that's sort of the way that we have been conditioned in American Christianity, maybe not as much today, but certainly in the last few generations, toward that's how lost people get saved. Like they come into a church or they come into an event, they raise a hand, they go through this thing, and the guy up front presents it. Whereas there's obviously, you don't hear me saying there's not a massive role for the word being preached in the local church to the saving of lost people. There certainly is. But I think the primary means of, like you're talking about, wanting to see lost people be saved and to come to be saved and baptized and go from lost to found, it's almost like the first line of defense on that. I think I'm trying to use a military metaphor, the scouts or the front lines of that is our daily lives in the community where the Lord places us, right? And so I think what we're doing is we equip the church to be the church, is we're training them in the word and in the gospel with the angle toward them, all of us, scattering from our gatherings, evangelizing the lost, bringing the hope of the gospel where we're at, and through that, the Lord utilizing that. So this is a super, super vital subject that I think we as, again, we're sitting here not only as pastors, but we're sitting here as Christians, like talking about our own personal lives. Like, how do we do better at this? And I think we all feel that conviction, as many believers probably do, to evangelize more. Those conversations, like with the gal who cuts my hair, she's been cutting my hair for like 7 or 8 years, and there's been some, at times we'll talk about just random stuff. At other times, it'll go into Buddhism, which she was raised in that kind of religion, and her mom was Buddhist, and so she'll kind of talk about that, and she'll ask me questions as a pastor, ask me questions about the church, and so and she even cuts a couple of my daughter's hair as well, and so I think they have conversations with her, and there's people in our neighborhood, that there's a guy in our neighborhood who is, I definitely call him agnostic. I think he would call himself agnostic, but he, they moved to our neighborhood from California 5 years ago, probably, and served on the HOA with his wife, and just a good dude, man. And so curious about religions of all sorts. And when he heard I was a pastor, he was like asking me questions, and so I shared some stuff with him. But then he wanted to kind of read something from our religion, because he's read something from all sorts of religions. So I gave him Mere Christianity, a copy that I had at home that I had read through and highlighted. And so I handed that to him, and he read it. He read it in like a month or two, and that created a few more conversations. And like those are still ongoing relationships that are there. Yeah. But it's just praying. Even as I say that, I go, have I prayed for his salvation? Mm-hmm. in the last month? Probably not. Have I prayed for his salvation over the last few years? Yeah. But that conviction of like, am I on the front lines evangelistically like I should be? Probably not.
Yeah.
You know, so.
Well, and like, I don't think we need to talk about this or anyone listening to this and it lead to shame.
Sure.
Right? Like conviction's a good thing, but like we ought not to do this because we're obligated, right? Christ is our righteousness. And we should want to do this because of a love for people, which I sense that in you for your neighbor, and because we want people to know Jesus. And I think like you have been doing it in just those examples. I think sometimes we think evangelism is only if we walk someone through the Romans road and get every aspect of Christ and his work. But just talking about your faith with people and about what Jesus means to you and what he's done in your life, that's something that can be just a great way to start evangelism. I think more often than not, even in my own life, it's like kind of even cowering away from those types of conversations just because of awkwardness or what people might assume if they know I'm a Christian or a pastor, or even like in the political climate we're in, it's like people, if they know you're a Christian, they'll assume things about you politically, which can be good or bad. And it's like, but not all of those are poor excuses for like, just tell people the good news. And like, it's not on us to close the deal. We can't save anyone. Salvation is of the Lord. So successful evangelism is just sharing the good news. It's not winning people to Christ. It's not saving anyone. We can't do that. It's way above our pay grade, but it is just sharing it and talking about it. And so that's definitely a resolution, if you want to call it that, for me. I thought about like putting a metric on it. Like I want to share the gospel once a week. So 52 times this year, but it's like, I don't know if I'm going to like put a metric, but I just want to.
That's kind of a lot, dude.
It is.
I'm totally kidding.
But like, I want to do it more because our role is unique, especially as preachers, that we do get to preach the gospel every week from a stage, which is that's evangelism.
Yeah, dude. And the last thing I'll say on it is simply, you're not going to argue someone into the kingdom. I think you're going to pray them in.
Yes.
So that's where I think the role of prayer and evangelism is really, really vital, because we're not going to save them. We're like, it's going to be the Spirit's work. Mm-hmm. And so then that's where we get to the Evangelism and Sovereignty of God, a wonderful book on this, that because we believe God is sovereign in salvation, it motivates us to hit our knees in prayer that he would save the lost, right? And that he would use us by his Spirit to do the work. So anyway, there, yeah.
Yeah, good stuff. Did not know we were talking about that today.
Yeah.
In true TBTC fashion. Well, yeah, like I said, we're back. In order to do this show, we need your questions. So hit us up, podcast@toBeTheChurch.com. You can also hit us up in the YouTube comments right here, where you're watching on YouTube, @ToBeTheChurch, or on social media, @ToBeTheChurch as well. Guys, good to be back with you. We'll see you later.